Hey guys, in today's video we're going to go over a blog post from Jesse Buss on why he dropped the London system. So I'm going to read through the post. I'll put a link in the description below if you want to check it out yourself, and I'll add a few thoughts along the way. Alright, so this was written by Jesse in October of 2020, and he says the London system is a very easy and effective opening to use at all levels of chess. Magnus Carlsen, the world champion himself, has used it not long ago, and it's a favorite among popular chess streamers Eric Rosen and Amon Hambleton. Yeah, and this is something that we've seen in PogChamps as well. A lot of players are picking up the London system, and it's something that I think from the black perspective you'll be facing more and more, so it's definitely a good opening to know. Jesse started playing chess around 6 years ago, and he came into chess completely blind, not knowing how the pieces moved. After 6 months or so, he had a blitz rating of 1,000 on chess.com, and after 2 years he was above 1,200. He was consistently getting bad positions out of the opening, and nothing was more frustrating to him than being completely lost after just a handful of moves, and this is when he really started to focus on openings. And I think Jesse is unique in this sense because a lot of players don't focus too much on openings because they've been told that spending time on openings could be detrimental to your chess. But Jesse has a very solid playing style, and he has a very strong opening repertoire. Alright, so then we get to opening study. Jesse has always enjoyed studying his openings. Not only does it make his openings stronger, but studying them also gives him an understanding of what plans to look for in the different openings, and it helps him to see new tactical ideas in common positions that arise in his games. All of the benefits are secondary to him enjoying the game, though. He will only ever improve in chess in the long run if he enjoys himself and he enjoys looking at openings. And that's a really good point. We can talk about efficiency and expected points gained and different things like that, but if you're not enjoying chess, you're not going to stick with it. So you should always keep chess fun. Studying openings are always going to be beneficial. It's just finding a balance that works for you. So first Jesse goes into the London system, and that happens after d4, d5, and some combination of bishop f4 and knight f3. But the key here is white is not playing pawn to c4, because that puts you into a queen's gambit territory. The London is a bit slower of an opening in terms of the pawn play. White will play c3 and e3. So Jesse says here he decided to learn and play the London system as white. He's a fan of slower positional chess in general, and he wanted to set out to improve his chess skills. He felt that going for a simple and maybe not necessarily the most pressing opening for an advantage that also has lots of middle game play would be a good way to go about improving. And he says here the London is dead simple to play. In nearly all lines you do this same setup. So we can see in the diagram here, pawns are going to c3 and e3, this knight goes to f3, bishop to d3, this knight goes to d2, you'll be castling, and that bishop stays on f4. So it's a system-based opening. You can play these same sequence of moves almost no matter what black does, and that's why from the black point of view it's nice to find lines that you can take a London player slightly out of their standard setup. So he says here the setup is simple, solid, and hard to break down for black. Better yet, the move order is not very important. You can pick your favorite sequence of moves. The first plan in the London is to break with the e-pawn or sometimes c4 and try to get your rooks to good squares. He says there's a free and a very digestible chessable course on the London called Short and Sweet the London series. That book took him as far as he needed to go, and it covers only 22 lines in total. Let's take a look at this book. Short and Sweet the London system. You can get it for free on Chessable. 22 trainable variations. One thing that I've found after doing some different opening work is that you really want to keep the lines learned probably within 200 lines for each color, if possible. So learning something like a 22-line opening course is a great way to get started on an opening, compared to doing some of these huge courses or buying a big opening book where you might have to learn over 1,000 lines. So this could be a good one to start with if you're interested in picking up the London system. He says you can learn that book in an afternoon, and more serious learners might want to tackle the London System Essential Theory by John Bartholomew. John's a very good coach, and he has a lot of experience in the London. He says the London was great for him, avoiding being lost in the opening, at least when he's playing the white pieces. And he was also very excited to play games with the white pieces where he could show off his new opening. And you can do it against no matter what black plays. Any defense, essentially, you can still play the London. And then here he emphasizes again the importance of enjoying chess. All right, now next he goes into the problems with the London. Time passed and he felt himself stagnating in a few big ways. First, he was getting the same position over and over. It's good for having a strong understanding of that position, but it could be bad for overall chess improvement. So he was getting a little bit bored with his white games. And one drawback of the London is dead simple to play against. It's almost impossible to blunder against the London if you're making So he's saying here that the easier an opening is to play, the easier it also is to play against. And then here he mentions the popularity of the London, so everyone seems to have their own defense ready. And that's a very good point. From the white side, you got to be ready for players having a defense. And from the black side, you should have a defense ready for the London. All right, so with all those factors, he decides to move on. But the next question was what to play instead. He wanted an opening system that was dynamic. He wanted something that was ambitious. He still wanted to stick with a d4 based opening. And he didn't want to start completely from scratch. And this is where Jesse and I had to talk about the different opening options. And I introduced him to one of my favorite openings, the Catalan. The Catalan helped me reach the 2200 level USCF. I first learned about the Catalan with one of Boris Avrek's books. And those books are massive. I don't necessarily recommend them for everyone, but they really give a good understanding of the ins and outs of the Catalan. So here's a look at the Catalan setup. White plays d4, knight f3, c4, g3, bishop g2, knight d2, queen c2, castles. You do a very similar setup almost no matter what black does, but you have a little bit more interesting position than the London, I think. And he says here, of course, black does not always play into the Catalan. You have to be ready for a lot of replies. King's Indian, Queen's Indian, Grunfeld, etc. Jesse followed Chess Explain's book, Keep It Simple, 1d4. He says the book is huge. He doesn't recommend doing every line. He studied 250 of the 1,000 plus lines. I have this book as well. It's a really good book. But I think if you were to purchase it, start with the quick starter guide. So we can see over here on the right, 101 variations quick starter guide. That'll get you started. And then as you see other variations come up in your games, just study those one at a time. But 101 lines is a great start. And then the results. So he's really enjoyed the Catalan. He's not seeing the same exact setup over and over, and he's giving his opponents a better chance to go wrong. Now here, if we look at this animated GIF, this is an example of a game where his opponent went wrong. The king ends up on d6, and he resigns after a fork. And then here's another game that Jesse played. So we can see he's delaying the c4 pawn a little bit. This is part of Christoph's repertoire on Chessable. Makes a trade in the center, but look at this g2 bishop pointing at the rook. So now he gets this nice tactic, knight g5, threatening a mate and the rook, and the opponent falls for mate. It says it was a mouse slip, but white was already up, probably the equivalent of a full point, or full piece. And he says these opening wins were both very solid against 1,600 plus rated players on chess.com. And this was my experience in the Catalan as well. Like even playing at OTB, I would get really strong positions against players close to the 2,000 level USCF just by playing natural moves, and I didn't have all the theory memorized. So it's a really good system to play. Against everything black is thrown at Jesse, he's always find himself in a highly playable position with a lot of play on the board. He's consistently getting fresh positions, learning how to combat many different types of middle games rather than seeing the same positions over and over, and he's enjoying playing chess again with the white pieces. So in conclusion, if you're feeling stuck and stagnant with your openings, tossing in something new can be a great way to help you find new ideas in chess. Jesse would also bet that it helps your overall chess game improve as well. He's feeling similarly with his black openings. He'll report back when he has something to share on that front. And I can tell you, he's switched from the Scandinavian to learning the Caro-Kann. I think he still plays both systems, but I'm waiting for the next blog post on why he dropped the Scandinavian. If you aren't sure what new opening to try, we do have a post on this, best openings for all skill levels. We have a Caro-Kann course, which you can find up here at the top. The link, Caro-Kann course. We have a 1d4 course that's almost ready to be published. That's not the Catalan, but it's recommending a more classical white repertoire with d4, c4, and knight c3. And eventually we are going to have a repertoire against everything besides 1e4. So it's going to be d4, knight f3, c4 type repertoire from the black side. And we'll also cover like the more offbeat variations as well. So a couple other things I'll note here. If you're interested in becoming a ChessGoals member, we have this link at the top. There's two ways to become a member. We have our Patreon, which is a monthly cost with 4 different tiers here. And you can see there's benefits for each tier. And then we also have our premium study plans up here at the top. These are $40 right now. You get into our Discord with lifetime support for your study plans. So I'm in there constantly, always helping people out. And this gives you a very structured list day by day, things to check off. And we have hundreds of players already on these study plans, and they've been seeing great results. So if you're interested in those, premium study plans up at the top. Become a member, more information about Patreon as well as the study plans. And if you like this video, please support us by subscribing to the YouTube channel, click the thumbs up, and click the bell for notifications. Thanks for watching.